4 months, a foul odor had spread through the Mount Pleasant neighborhood of Cleveland, Ohio. The stench was thick, sickly, and inescapable, seeping into homes, clinging to clothing, and making even the most routine outdoor activities unbearable. Residents complained, blaming a local sausage factory or perhaps a backed-up sewer. No one considered the possibility that something far worse, something sinister, was behind the nauseating smell. It wasn't until late October 2009 that the horrifying truth came to light. When police entered 12205 Imperial Avenue, they walked straight into a nightmare. The small, dilapidated home held a secret that had been festering for years. Decomposing bodies hidden in the most grotesque of places. But how had this horror gone unnoticed? And who was the man who lived among the dead? Anthony Sowell was not a man who stood out. To those who knew him, he was quiet, reserved, even polite. A former Marine, he had served his country, only to return to a life that spiraled into darkness. He had a criminal past, but many didn't see him as a threat. He blended into the neighborhood like just another troubled soul trying to get by. But behind closed doors, he was hiding a monstrous secret. In 1989, Sowell had been convicted of attempted rape and sentenced to 15 years in prison. His crime had been brutal. He had lured a woman to his home, assaulted her, and tried to strangle her. But after serving his time, he was released in 2005 and returned to Cleveland, moving into the very house where his reign of terror would unfold. Between 2007 and 2009, several women vanished from the streets of Cleveland. Most were struggling with addiction or homelessness, making them easy prey and tragically easy to overlook. Friends and family reported them missing, but their pleas often went unheard. Many assumed the women had simply left town or succumbed to their struggles. No one suspected that they had been lured to Sowell's house, only to meet a gruesome fate. Some of the missing women had last been seen with Sowell, but with little concrete evidence, authorities had no reason to suspect him, until one woman escaped. On September 22, 2009, a woman named Latundra Billups arrived at the police station, shaken and terrified. She had been to Sowell's house before, but this time was different. He had attacked her, bound her, and brutally assaulted her. Somehow she had managed to escape. Her account led police to obtain a warrant to search his home. What they found defied all comprehension. On October 29, 2009, officers arrived at 12205 Imperial Avenue. The moment they stepped inside, the putrid stench confirmed their worst fears. The air was thick with decay, the walls seemed to absorb the horror, and every corner of the home held an unspeakable secret. Their search began with a discovery that would haunt even the most seasoned officers. 2 bodies rotting in the third-floor bedroom. The remains were so decomposed that identifying them was a challenge. But that was just the beginning. As they continued through the house, their horror grew. A shallow grave in the basement concealed more bodies. In the crawl space, more decomposing remains. The backyard, too, held grim secrets. Several bodies had been buried in shallow graves, their skeletal remains peeking through the dirt. In total, investigators uncovered 11 corpses, each telling a story of terror, suffering, and silence. All of Sowell's victims had one thing in common: they were vulnerable. Most were Black women, often struggling with addiction or homelessness, making them easy targets for a predator like Sowell. He preyed on their desperation, luring them in with promises of shelter, drugs, or companionship. Once inside his home, they became trapped in his sadistic world. Many were strangled, their final moments filled with fear and pain. Some fought back, but within the confines of Sowell's fortress of death, their screams went unheard. Their families searched for them, but their voices were lost in a system that too often dismissed missing Black women as runaways or drug casualties. Anthony Sowell was arrested the same day police searched his home. He showed no remorse, no fear, no reaction to the horrors unearthed within his walls. His trial, which began in 2011, captivated the nation. How could a man live among the dead, sleep beside rotting corpses, and go about his daily life as if nothing was amiss? Prosecutors painted him as a sadistic predator, a man who took pleasure in the suffering of his victims. Survivors of his attacks testified, their voices trembling as they recounted the terror they endured. Families of the murdered women sobbed in the courtroom, reliving the agony of their loss. After weeks of testimony, the jury reached a verdict, guilty on 82 counts, including aggravated murder, kidnapping, and rape. The sentence was swift. Sowell was sentenced to death. Sowell remained on death row until February 8, 2021, when he died in prison at the age of 61. Though justice had been served, the scars he left on Cleveland and the nation remained. His case highlighted the failures of the system to protect marginalized women, sparking conversations about how law enforcement handles missing persons cases, particularly those involving women of color. The house where Sowell committed his atrocities was demolished in 2011, erased from the landscape but never from memory. The land where it once stood remains empty, a grim reminder of the darkness that once lurked there. The story of Anthony Sowell is not just one of horror but of societal failure. The women he targeted were not invisible, but they were treated as such. Their disappearances were not inevitable, but they were ignored. And for years, a killer was allowed to walk freely, his crimes festering behind the doors of a house filled with death. In the end, Sowell's name may fade, but the names of his victims must never be forgotten. Their lives mattered. Their stories deserve to be told. And their tragic fate should serve as a warning, a reminder that monsters do not always lurk in the shadows. Sometimes they live right next door.